Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the World Class Championship Wrestling Review Series. We are into the month of November 1986. We are fast approaching 1987, and that is a rough year in World Class. 88's worse. So the last 2 years, not a fun run, but we will cover all of them for your benefit. The most comprehensive audio wrestling archive on YouTube or on the internet is what we're going for. That'll take several years to accomplish. We need your help. Continued support, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Spike Johnson, Lance Von Erich opens the contest, the card here this week. Johnson calls himself the athlete of the 80s. Finds himself upside down on a hip toss. Uses a bit of power. Obviously, Lance Von Erich, the cousin to the other Von Erichs, has done reasonably well in the territory if you really think about it. Anyway, Spike on the inside goes for a big splash, misses a big splash, not very good if you're Spike here, and he uses several chokes and other maneuvers. Inside cradle and a near fall for Von Erich about 3.5 minutes in. Match goes back and forth. They get a little bit more out of this than one would expect, partially because I think they're trying to stretch. I mean, certainly at this point, and from this point forward, every guy that's in there has to put in some time, I would think. Actually, some names that I'm surprised to see come into the territory before the end of the year. Big backdrop by Von Erich. Von Erich has some trouble getting him over, and what looked like a power slam. The way he picked him up, just went for a release body slam, and Von Erich heads to the top rope, hitting a big drop kick right on the chin, and should get a victory off of that, and does. So that is the way that goes. An interview with the new world champion, Kevin Von Erich, is up next. What we see here is Von Erich talking about cannot retain the championship via countout, cannot retain it via disqualification or holding on to the championship, trying to stall a match through. He mentions going to Malaysia to fight, among other things. Crusher Yurkov versus Steve Simpson for the TV title. Joined in progress, Yurkov, of course, with the manager, Pretty Boy Larry Sharp, on the outside of the ring, and Bigelow manages to, the man later known as Bam Bam Bigelow, actually less than a year later here. Thinking about this, he is in the Survivor Series 1987, less than 1 year from, maybe about a little more, less than 13 months from this point. He's in the first Survivor Series. Anyway, big back body drop by Bigelow. Bigelow, of course, a guy who, for his time and size, a really, really big deal. He breaks in 1985. World Class, one of his first major territories. And he has quite the run over the next, 15 years? Something like that. On and off. And he gets some ride time with a reverse chinlock on Simpson. Doesn't get all he wants out of it. Actually does find himself on the receiving end of a arm bar and kind of a leg arm bar there. Bigelow, not a happy guy by any stretch of the imagination. Manages to break things down quite a bit, and headbutt by Bigelow tries to get things going back in his general direction. Simpson heads to the top rope, gets crotched by the interference of the manager on the outside. Pretty Boy Larry Sharp crotches him, and Bigelow picks up that television title. Not really sure where the television title concept came from. Maybe it's just a thing of needing an extra title or moving away from the Texas thing. I don't really know where that comes from. Perry Jackson and Master G is here. Master G, I believe, starts in the Mid-South /UWF area. A couple of maybe a year or so before this, something like that. I could be wrong on that, though. Not a fan of Master G. He's just awkward. Has a lot of trouble with just basic moves, and he's very bloated looking. Percy Pringle seems to like him, though, as he's managing him. There is a miscue between Jackson and G on a crossbody. That could be Botchamania worthy, and so that's there. Jackson really has some, I don't know if I'd say difficulty or unwillingness, depending on your perspective, to sell clothesline out of nowhere, big knee lift. Master G tries to look intimidating, and I suppose does if you really wanted to look at it, but it's also very clear that he does not particularly like his I guess you'd say lineup here, or whatever the case may be. Anyway, big back body drop by Jackson out of nowhere. Irish whip, and G gets a big shoulder tackle and almost overshoots his opponent. Percy Pringle on the outside, very happy with his investment in this man right here. And like I said, he looks bloated and uncomfortable. Interesting roll-up pinning combination. G gets the victory. Then we move to Brian Adias versus Mike Von Erich. Interesting to see a Von Erich against Adias, as that connection with the family has been a pretty big deal. The Adias Von Erich family connection has been a pretty big deal. That's going to develop not in a good way for Adias over the next several weeks. Basic wrestling, though, arm wringers and hammerlocks. Adias gets a little frustrated early. Of course, he's a former multi-time tag team champion, Texas champion, and the like. Not too long ago that he was facing off with Rick Rude. Rude, I think, has left the promotion. We don't see him for the remainder of 1986 here, and he's in the WWF by 87. So I think we've seen the last of Rick Rude in World Class, but Rude was good while he was here. Anyway, Mike Von Erich has a little bit of difficulty keeping his man under control, so to speak. And you can see the beginnings of Adias becoming truly, truly frustrated with being in the ring with Von Erich. That match does kind of break down into, I wouldn't say really a brawl, but there's some miscommunication there, and Adias manages to shake up the crowd a little bit. You hear the crowd beginning to turn on him. You hear a little bit of that frustration point lit out, and Steve Simpson comes out to try to console Mike Von Erich after he loses. We then move to comments from Simpson about losing the television championship to Yurkov. He vows to get revenge. He's been the TV champion for 10 weeks. He doesn't want to lose $10,000 to his adversary. He doesn't even mention who he loses it to, so I wonder if this was taped on a different day. Bruiser Brody says that Gary Hart wants Fritz Von Erich to sign some sort of contract. Doesn't go into great detail about what that contract would be or anything like that. He does volunteer to face off against Abdullah the Butcher again in the future, so don't know if that's coming. I do know it doesn't seem to happen in the remainder of 1986, but I would assume after a cage match, where do you go with it? Main event time, Matt Bourne against Dingo Warrior, and of course Bourne with Percy Pringle. Dingo signing a bunch of autographs before the match. Power by Dingo, including but not limited to a press slam early in the contest. They only have about 8 minutes or so to go. Poor Matt Bourne does not look like he lands well on the press slam. Crowd crazily behind the Dingo Warrior for sure. Takes over into a mat headlock. Dingo is able to launch Bourne into the lights with the back body drop, and again goes back to the mat. Just weird to see Warrior take anything to the mat. He was so well protected in WWF, you really didn't see him take things to the mat unless he was in there with a guy who could manage him really well. Not that Matt Bourne can't, but by the point, 89, when Rude's doing it or Kurt Henning's doing it, at least the Warriors get a couple more years experience. Anyway, we see the match kind of break down. Bourne tries to kick Warrior. Warrior catches him. And then the interference attempted with the cane by Percy Pringle. Warrior somehow manages to grab the cane and goes swinging with it. I would not want the Ultimate Warrior swinging any weapons in my general direction. Anyway, Percy Pringle takes a few shots at the Warrior on the outside. It is Bourne that introduces the cane, and Warrior grabs it, goes back into the ring with it, and we have basically a non-finish over that. Warrior cracks the cane, but we close this week on World Class. We'll be back with more right after this.